We begin tonight with the thought of a different world, one in which Pat Tillman has just been coaxed back for his 17th season, and Christy Mathewson lived to be 100 years old, and we're still arguing about the Hall of Fame candidacy of Del Chambers, and the Hobey Baker Award goes to the top NHL hockey player and not the top collegiate, and there is a Niall Kinnick Stadium for an NFL team in Brooklyn, and Jack Loomis is just a distinguished figure in the history of the New York Football Giants. Today has been Memorial Day, and despite what so much of sports has shown you this day, recognizing that all these other men and women are deserving of our gratitude and our remembrance, this day is not about honoring the serving troops, nor their families, nor our military as a whole. It is not about dressing up our ball clubs in camo caps that are different than the camo caps they wore last month, because that way we can sell you two different camo caps. This is about our war dead, period. And in sports, touching and lovely scenes of reunited families and salutes to veterans, as nice as they may be, this day should be about Pat Tillman and Christy Mathewson and Del Chambers and Hobey Baker and Niall Kinnick and Jack Loomis and hundreds of other athletes who first gave up their careers and then gave up their lives so that the rest of us did not have to. Pat Tillman's story, you know. It is tragedy upon tragedy, and it is so extraordinary for our time, even as our time suddenly became one in which the spark of service and sacrifice was reawakened on a cloudless September morning. There were times when it was almost the norm. More than 500 Major League Baseball players served in the Second World War. About 300 served in the First World War. Christy Mathewson, baseball's first idol, the pitching great of the New York Giants, went to France in 1918. During training, he was inadvertently exposed to the poison gas of the trenches. Captain Christopher Mathewson died of tuberculosis, induced by that exposure, 7 agonizing years later, at 45. Del Chambers never got that far. After 2 years in the minors in the Braves farm system, he got the extraordinary news that he had been added to the Major League roster and would be reporting to spring training the next year. And then he was drafted. On June 21st, 1968, when he should have been playing in the Texas League, Private Udell Chambers was killed in a rocket attack at Da Nang, Vietnam. Hobart Amory Hare Baker was this nation's first hockey star at Princeton. He turned down a reported 3-year contract for $20,000 to sign with the new Montreal Canadiens. Instead, he flew with the Lafayette Escadrille in France in World War I. Commander Hobey Baker died in a crash during training 6 weeks after the armistice. The award in his name was established in 1981. Niall Kinnick won the Heisman Trophy in 1939. Drafted by the Brooklyn Football Dodgers, he instead stayed at Iowa to attend law school and remained as an assistant coach for the Hawkeyes, and then came Pearl Harbor. On June 2nd, 1943, off Venezuela, the Navy F-4F he was piloting crashed. His body was never recovered. Iowa football plays, of course, at Kinnick Stadium. For 30 years, his family had opposed that idea, saying there was no reason their loss, alone among the 407,000 American war dead of that war, should be so remembered. This is the day on which Ensign Kinnick and Captain Baker and Private Chambers and Captain Mathewson and Corporal Tillman and all the others should be so remembered. Remembered with solemnity and not souvenir caps. And we should remember Jack Loomis of Baylor and the 1941 New York Giants. He was an end. He played 9 NFL games without much distinction, caught 1 pass for 5 yards. 40 days after he and the Giants lost the championship game that year to the Bears, he enlisted in the Marines. President Abraham Lincoln established the Medal of Honor. It is the greatest recognition this country can bestow on those we remember on Memorial Day. In the more than 153 years of military action the medal covers, only 621 have been posthumously awarded. In all our history, only 621. 14 of them in one battle in World War II, Iwo Jima. You can turn to any page in the book of citations for the Medal of Honor and find yourself weeping within paragraphs or seconds. This was the citation for Jack Loomis of Baylor and the 1941 New York Giants and Iwo Jima. Loomis Andrew Jackson, awarded May 5, 1946, posthumously. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as leader of a rifle platoon attached to the 2nd Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces on Iwo Jima in the Volcano Islands, 8 March 1945. Resuming his assault tactics with bold decision after fighting without respite for 2 days and nights, First Lieutenant Loomis slowly advanced his platoon against an enemy deeply entrenched in a network of mutually supporting positions. Suddenly halted by a terrific concentration of hostile fire, he unhesitatingly moved forward of his front lines in an effort to neutralize the Japanese position. Although knocked to the ground when an enemy grenade exploded close by, he immediately recovered himself and again moving forward despite the intensified barrage, quickly located, attacked, and destroyed the occupied emplacement. Instantly taken under fire by the garrison of a supporting pillbox and further assailed by the slashing fury of hostile rifle fire, he fell under the impact of a second enemy grenade. But courageously disregarding painful shoulder wounds, staunchly continued his heroic one-man assault and charged the second pillbox, annihilating all the occupants. Subsequently returning to his platoon position, he fearlessly traversed his lines under fire, encouraged his men to advance, and directing the fire of supporting tanks against others stubbornly holding Japanese emplacements. Held up again by a devastating barrage, he again moved into the open, rushed a third heavily fortified installation, and killed the defending troops. Determined to crush all resistance, he led his men indomitably, personally attacking foxholes and spider traps with his carbine and systematically reducing the fanatic opposition until, stepping on a landmine, he sustained fatal wounds. As a note, the citation omits that the landmine blew off Jack Loomis's legs. He was still conscious when he died at an aid station. To resume. By his outstanding valor, skilled tactics, and tenacious perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds, First Lieutenant Loomis had inspired his stout-hearted Marines to continue the relentless drive northward, thereby contributing materially to the success of his regimental mission. His dauntless leadership and unwavering devotion to duty throughout sustain and enhance the highest traditions of the U.S. Naval Service. He gallantly gave his life in the service of his country.